Trauma Therapist Podcast, episode 443. All right, guys, welcome to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise awareness of trauma and to support new trauma therapists just starting out on their trauma-informed journey. I do that through this podcast and my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0. If you're a therapist of any kind interested in learning about trauma and you're looking for support and inspiration, I invite you to check out Trauma Therapist 2.0 by going to traumatherapist2.com. That's traumatherapist, the number 2.com. All right, let's get started. This episode is sponsored by Cptscfoundation.org. And one of the great things about, for me, about doing this podcast is that I get to speak to and work with amazing people. And Athena Moberg, the CEO and founder of Cptscfoundation.org, is one of those individuals. This woman is on fire. I got to meet her several months ago here in San Francisco. We had breakfast together and just had a really great talk. And I got to learn about her foundation and what they're doing. They provide complex trauma survivors and practitioners with compassionate support, skills, and trauma-informed education. Athena works together with expert practitioners and treatment centers, offering daily touch points to anyone currently in trauma therapy or who wants a safe place to come, feel heard and validated between therapy appointments. Some of the resources they offer are daily recovery support, healing book club. They have free support groups. They also offer this really cool thing where they can send you texts just to encourage you and help you heal on your journey. So check them out at cptscfoundation.org/trauma therapist podcast. Once again, that's cptscfoundation.org/trauma therapist podcast. All right, guys, just quickly, I want to thank Sensorimotor Psychotherapy Institute for being a sponsor on this podcast. Do you struggle to help numb, disconnected clients who can't feel emotion or explore inner experience? Learn a comprehensive approach to conceptualize your client's concerns. You know, as someone who's gone through the level 1 and level 2 trainings of sensorimotor psychotherapy training, I can really speak to the power of this training. For me, it was a game changer and is so inspiring. Sensorimotor psychotherapy uniquely includes the body in therapy as both a source of information and a target for intervention, because words are not enough. Go beyond theories and gain practical ways to open a new dimension for effective therapy. Visit Sensorimotor Psychotherapy Institute online today at sensorimotor.org. That's sensorimotor.org. All right, guys, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. I am very excited to finally have back Manuela Mischke-Reeds. Manuela, welcome.
Thank you. So glad to be here.
All right. So Manuela is a licensed somatic psychotherapist. She's an international teacher of psychology and trains health professionals in California, Australia, New Zealand, Israel, and Europe, and starting in China. That's probably been going on for a while now.
That's been going on for a while, yes.
Okay. Manuela co-directs and teaches at the Hakomi Institute of California that hosts her trauma training from trauma to Dharma. This training integrates current neuroscience of trauma theory, somatic and mindfulness-based interventions with dharmic teachings and embodied meditation practices. Manuela's most recent book is titled...
I think it's Somatic Psychotherapy Toolbox. It's 125 worksheets. That's both for the client and the therapist, which is pretty unusual. So it's both worksheets for both. So.
Okay, awesome. So when, I was putting together this series on how to manage in the midst of COVID-19 and asked my community who they wanted to hear from, your name came up. And your name comes up constantly, people who other therapists want to hear from. So glad to have you on here. So first of all, how are you doing?
I'm fine, actually. Yeah. I'm doing really well. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
And where are you located right now?
I'm in Woodside, California, Northern California.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm quite sheltered here with woods around me and nature, so I'm in a pretty good spot.
Nice.
Yeah.
So let's start here. What's your take, if you will, your response? How are you perceiving what's been going on from a kind of a global or macro level with regards to somatic psychotherapy and trauma per se?
In terms of the COVID-19 right now? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, there is what's going on. Well, we're all trying to figure this out, I think. And I've been thinking obviously a lot about that as a therapist, because like any other mental health professionals, we're getting a lot of calls, and I've been dealing with a lot of my clients and my students. So I've been hearing from a lot of people of how they're doing. In addition, I've been working lately with a lot of firefighters, first responders for about a year. So I'm talking to them right now as well. So I feel like I have a pretty good pulse on what people are feeling. And it's a whole range, and to be expected with any kind of trauma. So the way I see where we're at right now is that we're in a collective trauma experience. We all are in it. And we're all in it on a global level, which has never happened before. It's unprecedented, obviously. And it's interesting to watch. When it happened, I was actually teaching in Australia. And I was very aware of, because I'm from Europe, I was very aware of what's happening in Europe and what's happening in the US, that's where I live. And I was teaching in Australia, and they were kind of behind. And it's almost like a consciousness awakening happening. So every country went like, oh, it's not so bad. It's not going to happen here. We have a wonderful healthcare system. People had all kinds of wonderful responses, but often very misguided responses to really understanding what we're in here. And so I see it from one perspective of like this massive waking up of consciousness. So people are understanding the severity, obviously, that's starting to happen, but everybody is a little bit time delayed. But we have a huge opportunity to wake up. And so I think why we are here for the first place, I think has a lot to do with the interconnection of us all. We live in this perceived trance that somehow we're all separate, especially us in the West who are more affluent, that we can cushion ourselves into our homes and to our materialism, and we think we can isolate ourselves from suffering, but we really can't. And I think that's being punctured right now big time. So what's happening is I think that we're much closer than we think we are, and that trauma actually does matter and resonates through all of us, and it's not separate. That's one of my core teachings in the last few years, is that trauma, what happens to an individual, also happens to the collective. I've always thought that the way trauma has been taught without the collective awareness is misguided. The individual is part of the collective.
So if we kind of unfold that and extrapolate from that, that's pretty scary in a sense. I mean, this idea of a collective global trauma, that in and of itself feels very heavy and very overwhelming to me.
It is. It can be, but there's also the opposite true. Because if you're talking about a waking up of consciousness, the opposite becomes true as well. So yes, and this is, I think, where there's different stages. This is that we're all going through. First, you're in denial. It's like the stages of grief, really. And then it kind of hits you, and then it gets heavy, and then you get lethargic, and then you want to argue, and who's responsible for this, and you want to fight it, and then you get depressed, and then you start grieving, and then you start accepting, right? And then when you start accepting, a different awareness, a different consciousness rises. And this is what's so amazing, I think, for everybody who practices somatic work with trauma work, is we know that from a somatic perspective, that when you slow down, when you feel into the sensation, when you feel into what's happening in the body with your activations, with your hyper and hyperarousal, when you actually begin to become congruent and coherent with what's actually happening, both happens. The overwhelm is there and the resources there. That's true too. So it's not an either or. And right now, I think collectively we're kind of going like, oh my God, this has never happened. And we're all kind of going, this is so heavy and intense. Yes. And that's very much where I sit. And this is not new teachings. This comes right from the wisdom teachings.
So what is that and ... What is that action, that awareness that needs to take place in a sense? Or
that we are very close to nature. How we treat nature has an impact. How we treat each other has an impact. How we treat animals has an impact. We know this. How the virus started has to do with the breach, how we crossed into the terrain of the animals. How we treat our planet has an impact. And so that denial on a consciousness level that we think, oh, this is over there in another country, or carbon footprint doesn't matter over here. That kind of splitting of awareness we've been in for a very long time. And now that is punctured on such a global level. Never before have we all had the same thought and same striving that we have right now, which is a huge opportunity. And it's all going to land on us depending on our trauma background and our resources. But I found it's quite remarkable if you think about it, that we're all having the same thought of well-being, safety, how can we survive? And hopefully the next stage is not to survive, but thrive. That's where the resource part comes in. Because if you're not sick, if you're not directly affected, your loved one, or you're actually okay, you do not have to join that mindset. You have a choice, actually.
Okay. Say that again, and let's kind of expand that.
Sure. Well, unless you really are affected and you're ill from COVID-19, or somebody that's close to you, or you're on the front lines like a first responder or medical staff, unless you really are just having your normal life punctured and you have to just stay home, basically, and shelter in place, and you're inconvenienced, you do not have to join the trauma mindset. You don't have to do that. That's actually a choice that you have, because you can see and understand what's going on, but you can actually resource yourself. You can make a different choice. And in fact, I would really appeal to everybody not to do that, because we need the calm, grounded mindset and body to counter all that fear and upheaval and people who are really affected right now. Not everybody is affected. Yes, there's going to be a lot of people sick and dying. That's going to be true. And the people who are not can be actually a counterbalance right now. So I think that's actually very important.
So when you say don't make that choice, well, that is a choice. Are you saying, and I myself, I think I fall into that choice of becoming anxious. Yeah, becoming anxious, although I'm trying to dial it down in terms of what I'm exposing myself to, in terms of headlines and so forth. But is that what you're talking about? Making the choice to, okay.
Yes. I think we all, and of course this comes with education, which is what you're doing so wonderfully, that people need to have a trauma-informed lens, right? So yes, recognize some of the symptoms of anxiety, of depression, of fear, of all the freaked outness that's happening. But we have the wisdom, we know how to deal with it. We know that going into nature, we know that meditation, we know that yoga, we know that breathing, lying on the floor, connecting with other people, even over Zoom or phone or telepathically if you need to, just connection, in general connection, because trauma takes us out of connection. And so if I'm perceiving, oh my God, this is so terrible, the pandemic, this is horrible, I'm going out of connection, I'm going into my fear mind. And that's only half of the truth that I have to land myself in. I can say, oh, okay, that's happening. And I can also do something else. I can move my body. I can breathe. We can talk some more about some of the specifics, but I can actually take care of my nervous system. We have the power. This is inherent in all human beings. This is not something I have to go get. It's actually right here. We have it. And that's the power of somatic work. Your inherent technology is right here in your breathing, living body. And so by acknowledging the fear, by saying, yes, I'm going there. And what else can I do right now? What else is present too? Oh, the birds are chirping, or there is sunshine right now, or I enjoy the rain going on my window pane. I'm going into the and. And as soon as you do that, you have dual consciousness, dual awareness. And you're no longer in the grips of the fear, right? Because we know that trauma kind of activates the psychophysiology. We know that. And it feels like it's happening to me.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've hit the nail on the head, certainly, of what I'm feeling and have been going through. But it also seems like, Manuela, that what you teach and what you espouse in your trainings are almost vital now. It's almost like we need to put these into practice for our own health, because it's so easy to feel sucked into that other mindset.
Yes. And it's toxic. It's literally toxic. It's not just not okay anymore. It's actually toxic. We're damaging our nervous system. It's enough to have the fear, because having some fearful responses is actually intelligent right now, that we're social distancing and doing all these protocols that we're doing based on a healthy dose of fear is wise. That's wisdom. But to feed the fear, to feed that panic, that's toxicity. We do not need to do that. That's taking a step too far. And so I'm urging everybody to do somatics, very simple somatic practices. I'm also urging everybody to really be mindful about consumption on all levels. We're talking the kind of food that you put in your body, but also consumption of media and information. Get the basics so you're safe and you're informed, but don't feed that demon of this unnecessary fear, which will damage your nervous system. Right now, we're in a nervous system tipping point. And so we need to take care of our nervous system. And that's what I've been teaching a lot, that it's really trauma work, I think, is nervous system health work, to be coherent.
Well, let's talk more specifically about some things you would recommend for people to do.
Yeah. Even if you have zero background in any somatics, lie on the floor.
We all can do that.
We all can do that. Right. So lie on the floor, simply connect with earth and breath and the goodness of earth. And the other one is move your body. We need both. We know for a resilient nervous system health, in terms of recovering from trauma, we know that we need parasympathetic, the calming aspect of it, and we need the active aspect of it. So we need to move our bodies so we can metabolize and process through, and we need the calming so we can reset our nervous system. We need both. So if all you do is move your body, do exercise or whatever you do, and then do some resting down on the earth, you actually accomplish two big things, which is creating the resiliency of the nervous system and connecting with your body. And as soon as you connect, you start creating empathy and compassion and kindness. And then you want to help others and you want to help other people. And then you begin to connect and go into the action body, which is very important right now. We need to help one another in small and big ways, right? So even if you have no idea about any other more sophisticated practices, those two would already do. But really, like rest, really active rest, not vegging out. Netflix doesn't count, really resting, and then doing something active, like moving your body. But in general, I would suggest that people spend some time with some very basic mindfulness practice. And there's so many wonderful resources out there. And I teach a practice called the back body, where you're simply sitting up and you're sitting even supported by a chair. And you're feeling your sits bones into your chair. And you're feeling the connection between the sky and the earth, so the elements, which is very important. And then you feel you're doing a breath, very good guy. And then you're letting yourself feel that there is a center line right in the middle of your body. And it's an empty space. It's often referred to as the central channel, an energetic space connecting you between the sky and the earth. And then you can send your breath right into that central channel. And then you sit back. As if you're sitting back, there you go. As if you're sitting back just a half an inch into your own back of the body. So the whole musculature of your back body engages gently. There's a softness in the front. The breath travels in the center of the body. And then you engage your own back, like as if you're backing yourself up. And that is a very vital practice right now. So you're coming back to yourself, you're softening the front, you're letting the breath travel between the sky and the earth. It's very grounding.
I was just going to say, this feels very grounding. And by doing this, we're grounding, we're cultivating a self-awareness, just being present.
All of it.
All of it.
And then you can start feeling, right? You go,
Right.
oh, I feel heavy, or I feel grief, or I feel a little bit of anxiousness. And because you feel the backing up of your own body and the connection with your breath, as soon as you have connection, you can deal with the grief. You can deal with the anxiety. It's all doable. See, we were given all these feelings and experiences because we actually we are equipped to deal with stress.
Mm-hmm.
We're designed for stress. We would have long been extinct. And I feel like we need to not forget that. We're gonna be okay with this collective trauma. It's gonna change a lot of our ways, a lot of our perceptions. And there's going to be an identity crisis. It's usually, when you look at the literature of collective trauma, usually there's a phase of identity crisis that happens. Like, why me? Why now? What's happening?
Mm-hmm.
That disorientation. But it's a very important psychological stage. And so when we can embrace that, when we can come back into our back body and go, okay, I don't understand fully what's going on. This is scary. The uncertainty, right? Which is really crazy making for a lot of people. But the truth is, from every wisdom tradition, we're always with uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
We just fool ourselves into thinking that life is predictable and certain. It isn't.
Right.
Suffering and death happens every moment of our life around us. We just often are insulated from it. So we're not really aware of it. Awake now, we're all aware of it. But the truth is, it's happening all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so the uncertainty, we build these milestones, right? We say, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to travel here. I'm going to accomplish this milestone. And we think, therefore, our life is solid and real. But it isn't, right? And anybody who's experienced trauma knows that. I have to tell you, what I'm blown away by, trauma survivors and meditators are doing really good right now. The people who've gone through severe trauma and have, done a considerable amount of healing, they're going like, yeah, I know how to weather this. I know how to go through this. It's blowing me away, actually.
Really? Like this, finally, you guys can see what I've had to deal with or what I've been going through.
Yeah, it's not so much like now it's your turn. It's not so much like that, but it's more like, I understand the journey. Mm-hmm. There is a journey to be had. And it's like, I understand. I've been through it. One of my clients who had a very life-threatening illness, almost died. And she lost parts of her brain function for 2 years. I mean, horrific. Her entire life fell apart. And she's now saying, I'm okay. I'm really okay. I get the fear. Yes, I have concerns, but I'm okay, and we're going to be okay. And I've been hearing that from people who've had severe trauma. Oh. They're saying that. I'm just blown away by it, actually.
Because they've gone through that journey. They're continuing to.
Yes.
Right.
And they recognize the elements of the journey.
Right. So let's kind of switch gears here a little, and talk about therapists and how what they're up against with this in terms of working with clients and so forth. Now, let me just remind everyone that I'm speaking with Manuela Mischke-Reeds. You offer online trainings. By the way, in my community, my Trauma Therapist 2.0 community, your online courses have come up. I know a couple people have taken them, and they rave about them.
Oh, that's really sweet.
So I just want to put that out there for our listeners that
thank you.
This woman is a real deal here. So let's talk a little bit more about some thoughts for the therapists who obviously they have to care for themselves, but they're also caring for clients and so forth.
Yes. And it's really challenging because we're in that same soup at the same time, right? So usually we're dealing with trauma a little bit time delayed, or we have our own stuff and we take a break, or, it's past trauma we're dealing with, or if we're doing crisis management, obviously we're in it with the client. Practice resourcing right now, like more than you've ever done. Whatever resource tools that you know about, acquire new ones, but a lot of nervous system health. It's not even a luxury anymore, it's vital. It's your tool. And So that's really important to resource yourself.
For the therapists themselves?
For the therapist. Resource yourself before a session, after a session, and during a session. So the back body practice is what I teach all my students. This is how I come back 20 times throughout a session. I come back to my back body. So I resource myself while I'm with my client, So that's number one. And then also really acknowledge people's fears. Sit with the intensity. Do not go, oh, well, all gonna be okay. Don't worry about it. The predictions say that cheerleading attitude is not so good. I think people need to also be acknowledged of what the heaviness, the intensity, the grief, right? I was sitting with a client the other day, and right now I'm doing it over Zoom, and she was having a panic attack over Zoom, not what we want to have happen as therapists.
Right.
And I was just saying, yes, that's true. What you're feeling is real. Yes, and that acknowledgement, then it started to calm down because it's like, yes, that's what's happening. So the immediacy, present moment, focus work is very important. Resource yourself, resource your client. Give them tools, give them breathing practices, moving their bodies. If they're too lethargic, the other day, I couldn't believe it. I actually spent 30 minutes talking my client out of the house because she was on her couch for like 3 days, hadn't eaten much, was completely immobilized with fear. And it took me 30 minutes to get her out of the house. And I walked on my driveway and she walked outside her home and to mobilize her body. And after 30 minutes, I could feel her breathing coming in. And finally she says, oh my gosh, okay, there's life out here. I mean, it was really severe. She went down a tunnel. And it took me all this time I said, I need you to get out. We need to walk right now. Let's walk. So not to be afraid to be, especially over Zoom, it's so funky for a lot of therapists right now. They're not used to it. We need to be a little bit more like, come on, let's try this. Making suggestions. How about, be a little bit more experiential. Come on, let's try this thing. Or how about we get up and move a little bit? Or you've done this yoga move that you loved so much, or this Qigong exercise. So use whatever you got. Right. But mobilize the body in an appropriate way and then look for the opportunities where you can bring a little bit of resting and settling in. So those two components I was saying earlier. So resource as a therapist, use some tools, even if you're not so comfortable with somatic tools, but you know how to kind of just do a very simple pedestrian moving around and then just a quietening down. And having people be in that awareness and tracking it would be incredibly beneficial.
Do you think that, generally speaking, therapists themselves are just in a heightened state of anxiety or freeze even? I mean, I guess everyone is maybe to a certain extent, but what is your experience?
Well, I have to say in my Hakomi community, we've had large Zoom gatherings and I've been checking in with them and they're actually doing very well. And part of this is they're doing very present moment focused work. A lot of them are meditators. There are somatic practitioners of some sorts. They all do movement. They're doing it. Yoga people, I mean, they're doing it. And I was pretty amazed how well they were doing, actually. They were quite resourced and they were ready to help.
Wow.
So a lot of people are also very touched, right? So because the other piece I want to mention is also this incredible moment for compassion and heart-centeredness, right? So it also is touching us. And so being with another person suffering, our own, our families, our clients, puts us into a heart space. So yes, therapists are, maybe some of them are very mobilized themselves. So maybe they need to get together and do maybe group supervision or just even collegially getting together, talking about it. I've talked to a bunch of therapists in LA and they were having collegial Zoom calls just to kind of support one another. I think that'd be a wonderful time right now. I just did a Zoom call with a bunch of people who finished my training. These are all therapists. And we were doing some advanced topic and we talked about collective trauma and just the being together. It was very nurturing for me. And so I think that's very helpful. Being in a collective nervous system,
right.
Where we're having the intention of heartfulness and goodness, very important.
So in terms of what you have going on now, let's talk a little bit about the book and then your trainings.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Well, the book is was published by Cptsc, and it's 125 worksheets, and it's basically exercises and protocols of working somatically with stress and trauma. And as I said, there's some of them are for the therapist. I really believe in the resource therapist. I believe that this nervous system needs to be coherent before I can help another nervous system.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm also big on, as I said, having my coherency not just be before and after the session, but in the session. So when I feel like I'm getting arousal, I slow down and I take a breath and I bring myself back so that I can be present again. So I do that a lot. And once you practice it, it comes very second nature. So in that book, there are exercises for the therapist, and then there are exercises and worksheets for the client. So it really talks about all kinds of different somatic techniques.
So you're
very helpful right now.
Yeah, I would imagine. And just to go back to that one example, so you're talking about the therapist resourcing herself in right in the moment there.
Right in the moment.
Right. So
right in the moment.
Obviously, you're still, the client's in front of you. What's going on in your mind when that happens, for example? Because I can imagine a listener saying, well, wait a minute, this is not about me. It's about the client. How am I supposed to, what does that look like?
Love it. See, this again is to me the wrong paradigm. It is about us. It's two nervous systems connecting. And this paradigm of like, I'm this incredible expert and I'm helping you. I think this is not a good model. I think, yes, the person, the therapist has tools and techniques and expertise, but I'm here to support and help. And there's a very different mindset versus I'm here to heal you or fix you. I really don't subscribe to that model. But it's all about slowing down and becoming present. And when you're present, you become coherent with whatever is. If it's anxiety, if it's feeling great or blissful or angry, whatever it is. But as soon as you know what's actually happening, you have choices and you have opportunities to change it and enhance it. So when I notice, I'm getting triggered, I'm getting spaced out, or like this client who couldn't get off the couch for 3 days, I was seriously worried. Or the client that had a panic attack over Zoom, I was like, I had this little spike. I'm going like, oh my goodness, I'm very far away. I am not in the office, right next to they're by themselves. And there was nobody there. This person lived alone. And I had this little spike in my own heart rate go up, and I noticed it. And I said, I'm noticing too, as you're having a panic attack, it's really impacting me too,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to take a breath, and how about I help you? And we together take a breath together. So I'm taking the benefit of that breath as well. Right, and that's really okay. Right, and it's actually important because when I regulate myself, the other person will feel it as well. And we have a co-regulation going on, right?
Right. Yeah, that's awesome.
So I do that. And then there are breaths that I do more privately that the client doesn't even know. That's what I teach in my training. There are certain breath patterns I do, and that regulate me down. So when I see my client going up, I do a different breath and I bring myself down. And it will have also a nervous system impact because when I'm regulated down and my client won't go up as high. So I've been experimenting with that a lot. But just very simply acknowledging like, wow, yes, I can really feel that. And it's impacting me too. And how about we together take a breath together? Let's put our hands on the belly. Let's slow down for a moment. And how about we give this some space?
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about what you have coming up in terms of trainings.
Sure. There is another online level 1 happening from Trauma to Dharma that begins, I believe, in May. That's for the Hakomi Institute of California, where I do a lot of my trainings. And then I'm putting together also, my students have asked me to put together an online, just doing practices like what I'm describing, like just basically doing Zoom calls and talking people through different protocols that they can use themselves, some of them from the book, or use with their clients. So I'm going to put that together. That's coming. It's probably going to be like a weekly Zoom call. Mm-hmm.
And the level 1 from Trauma to Dharma, what is that specifically?
That's a 6-week self-directed course. And so people have a whole week to finish it. Their little video clips, their audio, their readings, their inquiry questions. And students have a whole week to learn a topic. And then there's 2 Zoom calls over the 6 weeks, one at the beginning, one at the end. But it's very self-paced. So people are learning the foundations of the trauma to Dharma work and the view. Mm-hmm. And today I talked a lot about the view, actually, quite a bit, how to hold even trauma and suffering as this interconnected phenomena. So a lot about the view, and then some big brushstroke topics. And then level 2 is usually in person that I've been teaching in Germany and here in the Bay Area. And I was just about to start it in Australia, which would have been this week. And I had to, come back. But it's going to happen. And maybe I even put some of it online if this continues. So I definitely will make these teachings available. I feel like they're critical for people.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been awesome. I just love listening to you and having you on here. What's the best way to get in touch with you, Manuela?
It's through both the Hakomi Institute of California or through my website, Mischke-Reeds.com.
Okay. And I'll have that linked up here at the show notes page at thetraumatherapistpodcast.com. Yeah. Manuela, thank you. Stay well, and
you too.
We'll be in touch. Take care.
Thank you so much.
All right, guys, just quickly, I want to thank Sensorimotor Psychotherapy Institute for being a sponsor on this podcast. Do you struggle to help numb, disconnected clients who can't feel emotion or explore inner experience? Learn a comprehensive approach to conceptualize your client's concerns. As someone who's gone through the level 1 and level 2 trainings of sensorimotor psychotherapy training, I can really speak to the power of this training. For me, it was a game changer and is so inspiring. Sensorimotor psychotherapy uniquely includes the body in therapy as both a source of information and a target for intervention, because words are not enough. Go beyond theories and gain practical ways to open a new dimension for effective therapy. Visit Sensorimotor Psychotherapy Institute online today at sensorimotor.org. That's sensorimotor.org. This episode is sponsored by Cptscfoundation.org. One of the great things about, for me, about doing this podcast is that I get to speak to and work with amazing people. And Athena Moberg, the CEO and founder of Cptscfoundation.org, is one of those individuals. This woman is on fire. I got to meet her several months ago here in San Francisco. We had breakfast together and just had a really great talk. And I got to learn about her foundation and what they're doing. They provide complex trauma survivors and practitioners with compassionate support, skills, and trauma-informed education. Athena works together with expert practitioners and treatment centers, offering daily touch points to anyone currently in trauma therapy or who wants a safe place to come, feel heard and validated between therapy appointments. Some of the resources they offer are daily recovery support, a healing book club. They have free support groups. They also offer this really cool thing where they can send you texts just to encourage you and help you heal on your journey. So check them out at cptscfoundation.org/trauma therapist podcast. Once again, that's cptscfoundation.org/trauma therapist podcast.